Hello everyone, I'm Vanished Signal. Before we get into tonight's footage, hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Story 1, Record B12, A. They never originally assigned me to records. I only ended up there because a busted HVAC unit flooded half of admin. They needed warm bodies to relocate while the cleanup crews gutted the vents. Temporary reassignment, they told me. Help out archives, push some papers, nice and quiet. Except the archives weren't on any floor I knew about. They weren't even in the directory. They were beneath all of it. The directions they gave were suspiciously vague. Past the maintenance corridor, take the freight elevator labeled Staff Only, and go 2 levels beneath the parking sub-basement. The deeper I went, the more the surroundings changed. Drywall gave way to rough concrete, then older material, cracked tile, stonework maybe, or something that had been painted and repainted until it forgot what it used to be. The elevator shuddered all the way down and dinged with a sound like rust being torn apart. The doors slid open with a mechanical wheeze, revealing a long, narrow corridor lit by jaundiced bulbs, walls sweating with condensation. No signage, no cameras, no people. At the far end, a man sat behind a cracked desk, staring past me like I wasn't even there. He chewed the inside of his cheek, one hand twitching near a silent keyboard. His badge was flipped backward, his nameplate blank. When I gave him my name, he didn't acknowledge it, just pointed wordlessly to the left. A reinforced door buzzed. Slowly, reluctantly, it creaked open. The air inside the archives was dense and sour, thick with the smell of decaying paper, ozone, and mold. It was the scent of things that should have stayed buried. I stepped in. The layout didn't follow any real logic. Rows of mismatched filing cabinets stretched too far in some places, looped back on themselves in others. Ceiling panels were missing at random intervals. There were no clocks, no intercoms, no window. Somewhere in the dark corners of that space, a deep hum buzzed. Constant, low, and almost living. My assignment was straightforward. Sort and digitize boxes from section B12. But when I finally found it, someone had scratched an extra character onto the metal placard. Row B12, of every single box in that section, was sealed with thick, black industrial tape. Stamped across each lid in red ink was the same warning. Do not scan. I went back to the desk. Asked the attendant what the hell that meant. He looked up, really looked at me for the first time, and said flatly, "If you already opened one, you might as well finish." I told him I hadn't. He didn't respond. Now I was holding a box. I brought it to my assigned station, metal desk, dusty monitor, lone VHS player, and began peeling the tape. The adhesive pulled like skin. Inside the box were 3 items. A VHS tape, labeled in marker, 041327, a folder of carbon-copied paperwork, almost all of it redacted beyond readability. A handwritten note on yellowed stationery, "Do not review alone." I looked around. The room was empty. The overhead lights dimmed, just slightly, like they were breathing. Somewhere in the distance, that humming sound shifted, deepened. I slid the tape into the player. The machine clicked. Word. And I hit play. The footage was grainy, grayscale, and timestamped to the second. 4:13:27. The camera feed was pulled from a mounted unit, bolted high into one corner of a windowless room. The walls were cinder block, the floor bare concrete, and the only furnishing was a battered metal desk and 1 chair, both centered perfectly under a thin strip of ceiling light that flickered every few frames like a dying pulse. At first, the room was completely still. Then, at exactly 4:13:42, a man stepped in from beyond the left edge of the frame. Middle-aged, sharp features, clean-shaven. He wore a lab coat that was wrinkled, like he'd been lying down, and his gait was slow, hesitant. He looked like someone waking up mid-dream, eyes wide but unfocused. He came to a full stop at the center of the room and was turned his head to face the camera. Not look at it. Lock eyes with it. It was as if he knew someone, maybe me, was on the other side, watching, recording, waiting. He moved to the chair with mechanical grace, sat down neatly, and folded his hands in his lap. For nearly a minute he remained still. No movement, no blinking, his expression neutral. So still it became unnerving, like a video paused on a living frame that kept subtly breathing. Then, the ceiling light above him began to dim, not in flickers, but a slow, unnatural fade, like something was draining the energy straight from the source. Shadows stretched along his face. The skin beneath his eyes seemed to hollow. His mouth twitched once, as if something behind it wanted out. At 4:14:55, he parted his lips and began to speak. But no sound came through. I tapped the audio panel, checked the levels, rewound, rewatched, tried a second terminal, nothing. His lips were moving, shaping full sentences, but the sound was completely gone. Not corrupted, not glitched, just absent. He kept talking, occasionally gesturing with one hand or nodding toward something off screen. At one point, he glanced down at the table, nodded twice, then made a shape in the air with his fingers, like sketching a diagram no one else could see. His expression shifted between concern, concentration, and a strange sort of resignation. Then, at 4:17 and 9 seconds, his entire body jolted, a full, spine-snapping convulsion, like he'd been struck with an unseen current. His eyes shot open wide, rolling up into his skull. His mouth stretched too far, too wide, locked in a frozen scream I couldn't hear. He clawed at his own throat like he was choking, but there was nothing there. That's when I saw it. Something moved behind him. It wasn't a person, not even a shape. More like a disruption. The air shimmered, distorted. A ripple like heat haze, but with a cold presence that pushed through the screen like a breath against the back of my neck. The camera picked it up as a slight blur, a bend in the frame that wasn't part of the original feed. The man collapsed forward against the table. Then the tape glitched. It skipped, 3 seconds, maybe 4, and resumed with a static flicker. When the image settled again, the room was empty. No man, no sound, no trace of struggle. The chair had been righted. The desk was spotless. Even the flickering light had returned to a steady hum. But the camera had moved, not dramatically, just slightly, angled differently, as if someone had nudged it to the right by a few degrees. Like whatever had been there wanted to make sure I was still watching. Then, at the bottom of the screen, a message appeared. Not part of the timestamp, not part of the overlay. Just 3 words, crisp and glowing faint red. Record continues. The screen went black. The machine kept running. The reels spun. The time code advanced, but no image returned. I paused, rewound, scrubbed through the remaining footage. Still black. There was tape left, nearly 10 minutes, but it showed nothing. No noise, no distortion, just the black void of a camera feed with its eyes closed. I ejected the tape, examined the reel by hand. It looked fine. No visible damage, no splice, no heat warp. Just empty past that moment. Then I looked down at the next box in the stack. Stamped across the top, same red ink, 04-2614, and underneath, do not scan. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't open it. Not yet. I've reviewed the footage from the 3rd tape more than a dozen times now. At first glance, it's nothing. just static silence, the flickering hum of an old fluorescent bulb overhead, and dust drifting through the light like snow suspended in water. For nearly a minute, there's no change. Then, movement, subtle at first. A filing cabinet drawer begins to slide open, not yanked or forced, but guided. Smooth, deliberate, as if a memory was unfolding in real time. There's no one in frame, no visible source, but the drawer opens anyway. Frame by frame, the tape shows what looks like an invisible hand flipping through folders inside. Each manila sleeve parts from the next with mechanical precision, as though the air itself was imitating human motion. Nothing aggressive, nothing sudden, just methodical, almost thoughtful. And then it stops. One folder is pulled forward and left sticking out at an odd angle, just enough to catch the light, just enough to be found. The label on its tab reads B12A. It matches the reference in the logbook. Same number stamped on the VHS case, same name in the discrepancy records. It shouldn't exist, but it does. And someone, or something, wants it to be seen. The timestamp shows this all occurred at exactly 2:37 a.m. That's 10 minutes after the facility locks down and disables all access to sub-level lights and climate systems. At that time, there should be no movement, no personnel, no power to the archive hallway. But the drawer moved. The files shifted. The camera caught it. No thermal signatures, no triggered alarms, just the mechanical eye of an old CCTV unit, bearing witness to something impossible. I couldn't ignore it. I had to confirm it myself. So I waited. I didn't log the visit. I used a backup key card, one with no active trail. When my shift ended, I walked the same route into the basement. And it felt different, not just cold, but aware. Like the stairwell was exhaling slowly as I descended, like it knew I was coming. Row 4B, third cabinet from the end. I found it exactly as I remembered, but this time when I opened the drawer, it shrieked. Not the usual rusted hinge groan. This was a strained, almost vocal sound, like the cabinet didn't want to be opened. I scanned the files, perfectly organized. Tags facing forward, everything alphabetical. Except for one thing, there was no B12A. The entire B section was missing. It leapt straight from A91 to C01. No gaps in filing, no sign of tampering, just a clean, surgical absence. Like the B section had never existed, or like it had been deliberately erased. But the most disturbing part wasn't the missing folder. Inside the drawer, carved into the metal, were scratch marks. Dozens of them. Tiny rows, always 5 lines. Like tallies. Scraped into the base of the drawer, as if made by someone trapped inside. Or something keeping count. They were deep, repetitive, and fresh. As I backed away, I felt it again. That pressure. Not from behind, not from above, but below. The concrete beneath my boots felt charged, like it was listening, like it was waiting for something. I filed a false maintenance flag to buy time. That gave me access to the internal log. According to system records, that cabinet hasn't been opened in over 15 years. But the tape I watched was recorded 7 days ago. Now, every night, I dream about that drawer. I hear the creak again, always at 2:37 a.m., and I wake with my hand twitching, my fingers moving like they're tracing invisible lines, like they're counting something. I think the archive is calling me deeper, and I don't think the next drawer will open unless I give something up. The air in archive room 6A felt different when I returned. Heavier, stiller, like something was waiting, tucked in the corners between file stacks and forgotten cables. It was the kind of quiet that felt rehearsed, unnatural. I kept the lights off. My flashlight barely cut into the dark. There was dust in the air, moving in slow spirals, as if gravity itself had shifted or the room was holding its breath. I reached the back wall and found the drawer again, B12A. It was still half open, the folder inside exactly where I'd left it. Except now, there was something else tucked inside. A microcassette, labeled in red pen. Just 2 words. Start here. No record of the tape existed in our catalog. It wasn't tagged, stamped, or logged. No barcode, no form. I took it upstairs to the transcription desk, plugged it into the last working player. Static first, a low hum, then a voice. It was mine, not just similar. Mine. Every pause, every breath. It even cleared its throat the same way I always do. The voice began narrating what I was doing in real time, describing me sitting at the desk, eyes fixed on the player, fingers slightly trembling. Then it paused. You won't remember finding the tape, it said, but you will return it when this ends, just like before. Before. I hit stop, checked the room, empty, doors locked. I rewound the tape and played it again. This time, the voice continued. You've triggered the 4th cycle. Record B12A exists to maintain the memory loop. Your compliance ensures containment. You may feel a headache. That's the partition reestablishing. And just like that, I did. A sharp, splitting pressure at the base of my skull. My vision blurred. My heartbeat surged in my ears. I pulled the headphones off and backed away from the desk, nearly tripping over the chair. I ran to the access logs, pulled up the drawer's history. The same name kept appearing over and over. Mine. Same badge ID. Logged entries at times I didn't remember. 2:13 a.m., always. 5 separate nights, 5 recorded visits, but no notes, no recordings. Nothing to explain why. I tried to cross-reference the audio files stored under my ID. Only one came up, labeled simply B12A4. It wouldn't open. System flagged it as corrupted. But the metadata told another story. It had been accessed 6 times this week, once every night. Same hour, always 2:13 a.m. Then the lights flickered. In the reflection of the screen, I saw someone standing behind me, watching, not moving, just a shape. Still, present, familiar. I turned. No one. Just a slip of paper on the floor, fluttering in the air vent's breeze. I picked it up, my own handwriting. End this now, or repeat again. The timestamp at the bottom? 2:13 a.m. tonight. I held the note tight in my hand, feeling the weight of it, knowing somehow this had happened before, that it might happen again, and that this moment, this choice, was the only chance to break it. We were 12 feet underground when the hallway behind us sealed, not with a door, with silence. It folded in like the building exhaled and forgot it had a way out. Chavez pulled at the latch twice. Nothing. Her flashlight clicked on, but didn't cut deep enough into the dark. Ahead of us, shelves, floor to ceiling, stretching into shadows that bent slightly to the left, like the room had a curve that didn't belong in this structure. Every box on the shelves had the same label, B12A. No letters following, no numeric IDs, just B12A over and over in thick black marker, some faded, some fresh, some still wet. We moved carefully, step by step. Our boots thudded against old linoleum buried under dust thick enough to take footprints. The air smelled wrong, like melted VHS tape and damp wool. I called out once, just a test. My voice didn't echo. It came back flat, not silent, just thinner, like the space-swallowed reverb. Chavez turned to me and pointed at the shelves. Look. The files were changing. Slowly, one by one, the labels shifted. I watched it happen. The ink melted, Letters crawled sideways, numbers reversed, until every single box now read B12A. Mercer, my name. This isn't storage, Chavez muttered. It's a loop. We turned a corner. Same shelves, same boxes, now labeled with timestamps. Each one was a date and a time. My time. Every patrol, every report, every incident I'd handled. Each box exactly 58 minutes apart. For a moment, I wondered if it was a prank, some elaborate setup. But I knew better. No one would build this far under a decommissioned records office. No one would stack this many lies. Then we heard the whisper. Next box. Not a suggestion, a command. Chavez backed up. I didn't. I reached for the nearest box, dated 2 days ahead, still sealed, still marked. I opened it. Inside was a tape recorder. Playing. My voice came through. Mercer, don't turn around. But I already had. Standing behind me was a copy of Chavez. Same uniform, same scuffed boots. But something was wrong with the eyes. Too wide, too still. It didn't blink, just smiled slightly, like it had already watched this moment a dozen times. I called out to the real Chavez. No response. The copy stepped forward. You're almost done. I ran. The corridor twisted. Left, then right, then somewhere else. No end, no beginning. Just walls covered in versions of my own handwriting, stamped again and again on file boxes I'd never filled. My flashlight began to flicker. The beam bent. It didn't bounce off surfaces. It just faded into space that refused to reflect. Finally, I reached a wall. Metal. Cold. A single terminal embedded into it. The screen flickered to life. Text blinked. Record complete. Please file yourself. I turned around. The box was open, and inside, a mirror. It blinked before I did. Then the walls folded in, and the last thing I saw was my own reflection, already sealing the lid from the inside. End of story, story 2. Terminal Shelf, the basement archive beneath Municipal Building 9, was supposed to be sealed off 3 years ago. Mold issues, air quality, budget concerns. Officially, it was off limits. Unused, forgotten. But somehow, the lights were still on. And someone, maybe more than one person, was still logging entries as if nothing had changed. I first noticed the inconsistency during a routine audit. Our digital records showed a steady trickle of access logs pinging from sub-basement level 3. An area blacked out on all internal schematics. No access codes, no working elevators, no reported maintenance. Yet motion sensors were tripping there. Late at night, always after 2 a.m., always when no one was scheduled to be anywhere near that level. I brought it up with facilities. They waved it off. Phantom pings, they said. Glitches in the system. Software hiccups. I asked if they'd done a physical sweep. They hadn't. The last work order to inspect the sublevels had been marked complete 5 months ago. But the clearance form bore my signature. The problem? I never signed it. I'd never even been down there. I double-checked my logs, my badge, my schedule. Nothing lined up. I contacted IT, asked them to pull any nearby footage. There were no live camera feeds for sub-basement 3, no active wiring, nothing. But when the tech attempted to isolate the timestamps near those motion alerts, something strange happened. The feed from sub-basement 2, the lowest active level, glitched. Briefly. Just a flash. A single frame. A shadow moved across the back wall near the elevator bay. We slowed it down. Frame by frame. The timestamp was precise. 2:13 a.m. The shape was wrong. It wasn't a person. Not really. It had the outline, but the proportions were unnatural, and the shadow didn't bend or stretch with the light. It was rigid, fixed, like a silhouette taped to the lens from the inside. Later that evening, I returned to my desk and found a manila folder placed dead center on my keyboard. No label, no markings, no accompanying note. Inside, 6 black and white photographs, each showing what appeared to be the same room from slightly different perspectives. Fluorescent ceiling lights, industrial shelving, a concrete wall with streaks of mold and cracked white paint. In every frame, a single black box sat low to the ground, almost like a footlocker. Unmarked, except for one detail. The front face had been scrawled with a thick red marker, a single line of characters, B-12. One of the photos had a timestamp in the bottom right corner. Same format as our internal cameras, same time zone. It read, sub B3-021300. I didn't request the folder. No one admitted to delivering it. The front desk logs were blank. Security hadn't seen anyone. But the moment I opened it, the scent hit me. Heavy and unmistakable. Old paper, damp stone, and mildew thick enough to sting the back of my throat. The exact same smell as the basement archive. The next day, Connor returned with 2 other techs from Central Records. They brought portable scanners, backup batteries, and a tablet loaded with a database index, planning to log everything that had been missed during the last quarterly audit. None of them had ever worked this deep before, not in this part of the archive. The moment they opened the maintenance door that led into the terminal shelf hallway, the fluorescent lights above flickered, then let out a deep, vibrating buzz that echoed down the metal shelving. It was loud enough to make one of the techs, Elena, flinch. She muttered, "Does it always sound like that?" It didn't, not yesterday. The shelves were taller than any of them remembered, and somehow they looked older. The ceiling hadn't changed, but the sense of scale had warped, like the shelves were stretching slowly upward, box by box, the further you looked. Stacked crates loomed just out of reach, even those that should have been within arm's length. Each box was labeled with inventory codes, but the fonts were different. The stickers seemed aged beyond the rest of the facility. Elena scanned the first box, label 19GR. Her brow furrowed. "This format isn't in the database," she said, tilting the tablet for Connor to see. "There's no matching code anywhere in the archive index. It's like this was cataloged by someone else, somewhere else." Connor stepped forward, pulled the box from the shelf, and opened it. Inside were dozens of loose photographs, old ones, Polaroids mostly, their edges curled from moisture and age. Each photo showed narrow aisles of shelves, eerily similar to the one they were standing in. Same rust-colored pipes overhead, same pale yellow labels curling off the cardboard. Some photos were marked with red pen, circles, arrows, small X's. Elena picked one up with shaking fingers. "This one. This is us." The picture showed 3 figures standing in the exact spot they now stood. 1 woman, 2 men, same heights, same building, same clothes. The timestamp on the Polaroid read 10:42 a.m. The tablet in Elena's hand showed the current time, 10:43. All 3 looked up. Nothing. But from somewhere deeper in the corridor, just beyond the reach of the lights, a box hit the ground. The sound was muffled, like it had fallen far away, but clear enough to draw their attention. The terminal shelf didn't end in a wall. It just dimmed into thick, uneven shadow, past where the lights had long since burned out. Elena slowly closed the lid of the box and stepped back. "We scanned from here," she said flatly. "No more walking in." Connor nodded, but his foot had already moved. 2 steps forward, just 2. And in those 2 steps, the air changed. It felt like stepping into a sealed room, dense, stale, like something had just exhaled. It made his chest feel tight. He turned to glance back at the others. They were frozen, both staring past him, eyes wide, unblinking. Pinned to the shelf just ahead of him was another Polaroid. It showed their backs, standing just as they were now. The timestamp read 10:45. The picture hadn't been in the box. It had just been taken. No footsteps, no noise. Just that one photo. Connor reached for his radio. It was dead, and the lights above began to hum louder. The camera in Sub-B Archive 3A, labeled CAM-43, has a blind spot near the eastern shelving wall. It's not on the official floor plan, and the camera feed skips exactly 2 frames every minute. It's not random, it's clockwork. A precise break in visual continuity, a micro-absence, the kind that you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. A junior tech was. He flagged it during a routine timestamp sync. 2 days later, he quit. No warning, just left his badge on the desk and disappeared. 48 hours after the anomaly was logged, subtle changes began appearing in the blind spot's vicinity. Not major, just enough to be off. Binders misaligned. Boxes rotated a few degrees. File tabs swapped for slightly different shades. Nothing caught on camera, nothing visibly moved. But every single alteration occurred precisely during the 2 missing frames. No deviation. Every change landed in that invisible space between recordings. Frame 42. Shelf empty. Frame 43. A red folder appears. Frame 44. Everything static again. Rewinding doesn't help. Scrubbing doesn't help. It's like watching a magician reset the trick mid-blink. One of the new files was marked Arrival Protocols, Terminal Shelf. The label was typed, but the inside was handwritten. Maps, dozens of them. Hallways that don't exist. Rooms labeled with letters we don't use. Stairwells that twist into themselves. One corridor was marked as non-recursive. Another was simply labeled Do Not Follow. A single keycard was attached. No mag stripe, no chip, just a plain white surface with a hand-drawn symbol. 3 overlapping eyes. When scanned at any terminal in the sub-basement, it didn't reject. It didn't log. It simply responded with Door accepted. The following morning, the shelving unit had physically shifted, just enough to be undeniable. The structure compressed against itself by maybe 3 inches, exposing a dark void behind the support brackets. A void that wasn't in any blueprint. We scanned the wall. No stud, no insulation, just open air. Security cordoned it off with tape, motion sensors, double-layer coverage on CAM-43. Still, at exactly 3:13 a.m., the feed showed the tape swinging freely, the sensors dead, and just barely, a figure emerging. Only 2 frames captured it. Tall, unidentified. One arm extended, fingers trailing the shelf edge like they were reacquainting themselves with an old route. Head tilted forward, no badge, no visible face. But the kicker, the figure's reflection was visible in the steel bracket of the shelf. A mirrored silhouette, only there was nothing standing in front of the reflection. We enhanced the footage, slowed it, layered frames. Frame 42, the aisle is empty. Frame 43, it's me. Not the figure, not the unknown presence. Me. Just standing there, facing the shelves. Except I wasn't there. I checked the logs, badge scans, GPS, witnesses. I was in the upper floor terminal bay the entire night. When I stood up to leave the terminal room after reviewing the tape, the hallway lights didn't flicker. They vibrated, like something unseen was passing through the frequency they used to stay coherent. For a second, the color of the light changed. Cool white to an almost bluish tint, the kind used in old medical labs. Whatever the blind spot is, it's not just contained in footage anymore. It's learning how to step out. It's moving. By the time we located the freight elevator's override panel, the building's lights had already begun cycling. Each flicker felt like a warning, a countdown. We'd rerouted through the south access corridor, past a stack of tagged carts and opened banker boxes strewn with unfiled case notes and warped cassette reels. The floors were littered with brittle folders, most of them collapsed into themselves, soaked with time and moisture. Reyes was 2 steps ahead, flashlight low, weapon drawn. She wasn't talking anymore. None of us were. Our footsteps were the only sounds left, muffled and swallowed by the layers of dust. The hallway narrowed as we approached the server maintenance wing. Bare brick walls pressing inward, the floor coated in fine gray dust, like the kind that comes from things too long left untouched. Strips of old signage clung to the corners, half peeled with age, their messages faded to gray lines. The air was electric, vibrating faintly with something we couldn't hear but felt in our teeth. At the end of the hall, a reinforced security door, half open, its hinges groaning faintly with each draft of air that passed through. The override panel was just inside, still active, still blinking. But the logs were wrong, not incomplete, rewritten. The input commands had been scrubbed and replaced by a sequence of internal memos. The first was dated 4 days ago. The second, 1993. The third had no date at all. Just the phrase, observer present, record unstable. The timestamp flickered each time we tried to read it. Before Reyes could process it, the lights in the hall shut off entirely. Just a sharp snap, like a breath held too long, finally gave out. Darkness swallowed everything. We raised our lights, sweeping the corridor with slow, deliberate arcs. Empty. Then a shape broke across the far end. Just a flash. A silhouette. Short, crooked posture, no sound, no footsteps. It was like watching a film splice itself out of sync. It darted left, vanishing behind a stack of filing cabinets that hadn't been there before. The motion triggered something low and primal in me, a sense of wrongness that bypassed logic entirely. Reyes bolted forward. I hesitated. When I caught up, the cabinets were gone, replaced by a door. Heavy wood, brass knob, carved frame. Too ornate for a place like this. It didn't match anything else in the building. I knew immediately what it was. Archive Room Delta. We were never supposed to enter it. It wasn't on any current map, only mentioned once in an old redacted orientation binder. I followed her in. No light switches, just a row of pull-cord lamps overhead, each casting a cone of yellow across a perfectly preserved room. Leather chairs, card catalog drawers, microfilm stations long powered down. And in the center, an oversized reading table with one single item placed on top. A large binder marked Shelf Inventory Terminal. The letters were hand-typed, slightly crooked. Reyes reached for it, but I stopped her. Something was off. The binder hadn't collected any dust. The table around it had. Even stranger, the room was warm, like someone had just left. The air still held that faint trace of perfume or cologne, something familiar and old. Then the lamp above us flickered. Once, twice. And someone whispered from behind the filing stacks, "Don't read aloud." Reyes drew her sidearm. I turned to sweep the corner. Nothing. When we turned back to the table, the binder had opened. It displayed our names, and next to each name, a location, a timestamp. Most were marked. Retrieved. We found him by the freight elevator, sitting cross-legged like he'd been there for hours, even though every log showed the system had locked the lift at 11:14 p.m. The night crew should have been long gone. No badge ping, no motion alert, nothing. Just silence until the cleaning shift found him, staring at the elevator doors like he was waiting for them to open again. He didn't speak at first, just blinked, slow and deliberate, like he wasn't sure how to use his eyes. It took 2 hours before we got anything coherent, and even then, the words didn't make sense. He kept talking about shelves that weren't there, listing names we couldn't verify, and humming a low, atonal rhythm that never changed. We tried calling his family. No answer. His emergency contact had been disconnected. Security pulled the internal feeds. That's when the real questions started. At 10:48 p.m., the elevator opened on sub-level 4. A man stepped out. Same uniform, same ID as the one we found later. He didn't react to the cameras. Just turned and walked past the secure archives, past the locked cages, and toward a section marked Terminal Shelf. Except, we don't have that section. It's not in the layout, not in the schematics, and the blueprints show a concrete wall past aisle 9. But on the footage, he walks straight through. No hesitation. Like the path's always been there. We watched him disappear into the dark. No flashlight, no pause. The feed kept running, but the angle blurred. Static crawled up the screen until it was just a grainy smear of noise. Then, at 11:06, the camera blinked once. No sound. And he came back. Same clothes, same gait. But something was wrong. He wasn't blinking. He didn't look at the camera. And in his left hand was a folder we couldn't identify. Plain, unmarked, stamped with a code no one recognized. B12-A/terminal-SH7-F. Not in the system, not in any archive. When we brought him in for questioning, he refused to answer anything directly, just kept humming that same droning tune, tapping it out with his fingers on the table. We left him alone in the room for 10 minutes. When we came back, he was gone. The footage showed him sitting perfectly still. Then, in a single frame skip, he simply wasn't there anymore. No blur, no movement, just an empty chair and a folder left on the floor. We opened it. Inside were documents dated decades before the facility was built. Personnel files for staff who never worked here. Incident reports detailing events we hadn't experienced yet. And a photograph, black and white. A long hallway lined with shelves. At the end of it, barely visible, a figure stood facing the wall. Same posture, same building, same uniform as the man we'd just questioned. We checked the archives again, walked the halls ourselves, measured the walls. The layout hasn't changed. There is no terminal shelf. But every night since, at exactly 11:06 p.m., the lights near aisle 9 flicker once, and the elevator dings, like someone's requesting it from below. We don't answer anymore. End of story 3. Project Deep File. The door to Archive B hadn't been opened in 12 years. Officially, the entire lower sub-basement was decommissioned in 2009 after a flood compromised the foundation. But the record still showed one active climate control unit running down there, drawing just enough power to suggest something had been deliberately left online. Last Friday, maintenance flagged a temperature anomaly. 3 degrees Celsius drop sustained for 36 hours. That's when facilities sent down Jordan Pierce, a third-party contractor used for low-priority walkthroughs. Simple checklist. Check the HVAC, log the temperature, take some photos, leave. But 3 hours later, he hadn't reported back. His phone pinged once from sub B2, then went dark. Security logged it as a signal dropout and moved on. Until the next morning, when his phone appeared on the internal network again, this time pinging from sub B5, a floor that isn't on the blueprints. That's when they brought me in. I've worked internal systems audits for 14 years. I've mapped every level of this building's network footprint, top to bottom. Sub B5 doesn't exist. The elevator doesn't go there. The stairs stop at sub B3. And yet, the thermal maps showed faint movement patterns one level beneath. I was given badge override clearance and instructed to wear a live cam, not for safety, for documentation. The elevator didn't recognize B5. But when I swiped my card and manually triggered a floor bypass, something happened. The screen flickered. The display turned off. The car kept descending. No lights, no music. Just the low mechanical hum and the smell of dust and ozone. When the doors opened, I wasn't sure I was even in the same building. Concrete, exposed conduit, no signage, no exit markers. Just a narrow hallway and a single industrial light humming 50 feet down. I stepped out. My radio clicked twice, like someone had keyed the mic on the other end. But no voice followed. The hallway sloped slightly downward, leading to a rusted metal door with a faint blinking light above it. The paint had been scraped off the label, but I could still make out part of the word underneath. Eject file. I pushed the door open. Inside was a cold room. Server racks lined the walls, ancient, humming, operational, all labeled with hand-scrawled codes and stickers from the late 90s. A thick binder lay on the desk at the far end, covered in dust but still open to the most recent entry. Date: March 21st, 2024. User: System Control Access Level. Admin override. Notes: Deep file engaged, confirming first contact. Then a second note, handwritten in the margin. Who gave it permission to write back? The footage didn't have audio, but we didn't need it. The time code read 24108 when the man, Dr. Hal Renslow, confirmed by a zoomed-in badge, entered the room labeled Archive E. He moved with calm familiarity, keyed in a 4-digit code, and pulled the heavy steel door open. The lock gave with a mechanical clunk. But when he stepped inside, something subtle changed. He froze just past the threshold. The security cam caught everything: the shift in posture, the tension in his shoulders, the sharp breath that pushed his chest out. A slight recoil, like the temperature had plummeted or the pressure dropped, like the air itself had density. He didn't move again for 27 long seconds. Then, slowly, with almost robotic hesitation, he stepped back out, turned, and stared into the corner of the room, a blind spot. No camera angle covered it. Unless the feed had been redirected or hacked, no one should have known what was back there. He mouthed something. We pulled the video, ran it through 3 separate lip readers, each with clearance. Independently, each returned the same result. Still down here. Dr. Renslow never clocked out that night. His car remained in the employee lot. The next recorded sighting was 12 minutes later. His ID badge scanned at the west stairwell leading to sub-level B4. Not just the basement. The level beneath the basement. The keypad for B4 was supposed to be non-functional. Disconnected in '97. That whole floor was archived, sealed, written off in the fire code update. No access, no route, no power. Yet the scanner blinked green. It let him in. We checked the logs. Nothing. No access request. No override. No manual key in. As far as the system was concerned, no one had opened that stairwell since September 1997, the same year Archive E was allegedly decommissioned and sealed due to a minor containment leak. Agent Paulson volunteered to investigate. He was equipped with a shoulder-mounted thermal cam, high-beam LED, and a 24-hour body feed routed directly to Central. He descended alone. B4 was worse than expected. The air turned thick halfway down. Cold, yes, but not naturally. A mechanical cold. Refrigerated. Intentional. The dust on the stairwell vanished past the second landing, like someone had swept it clean. The lights overhead weren't out. They were dimmed, humming with low power, like they'd been kept just alive enough. One of the old security consoles blinked in orange standby. Still operational, still warm to the touch. Paulson checked every corner of the corridor. Empty. Quiet. Too quiet. until he reached Archive F. The door was cracked open. Inside, dim fluorescent light flickering. No sound, no wind. But Paulson whispered something to Base. It smells like ozone, burnt metal, and... He paused. Rusted wires. Then something moved. A shadow, human height, passed just outside the flashlight's cone, fast but steady, like it didn't care to hide. He spun, light sweeping the corridor. Nothing. Then all the hallway lights pulsed once. A soft flicker, in unison. And the feed went dead. No static, no signal loss, no final gasp. Just full, immediate black. We've pinged his radio every hour since. The signal bounces back, but no voice comes through. Just the sound of breathing, not distorted, not mechanical, but not pulsing. The cadence is wrong. The breaths don't match human rhythm. They never answer back. They say the lower levels weren't even on the original blueprints, and after what we found behind Sub-Bay 3, I believe it. Not just believe. It's changed how I walk through every corridor now. The air down there doesn't feel like recycled building ventilation. It feels old, trapped, like it never expected to be disturbed. It started when Anderson's clearance scan failed at one of the bulkhead doors. He had the right badge, the right code, everything double verified. But the door just blinked red, then green, then back to red. We waited. Anderson looked back at me, unsure. A second later, the panel let out a mechanical click, then unlocked, by itself. We didn't ask questions. We just stepped through. The hallway beyond wasn't like the rest of the archive. The air was thick and cold, like stepping into a freezer. But it wasn't the kind of cold that chills your skin. It got into your teeth, into your bones. The walls were cement, not paneled like upstairs. No paint. Just bare, raw concrete lined with rusting pipes that hissed softly. No signage. No directional markers. Just a narrow strip of motion-triggered lights that flickered on a few feet ahead of us, one at a time, always staying just out of reach, like we were chasing something. We walked for what felt like 15 minutes, though the layout didn't seem that long, maybe less. It was impossible to tell. The lights played tricks, and our steps echoed longer than they should have. Then we hit a door. This one didn't have a keypad. No badge scanner, no intercom. Just a small metallic plate at chest height with a single engraved number, 0. No explanation, no context, just a 0. Not a label, almost like a warning. Anderson knocked once, half joking. We laughed, weakly. The door opened. Inside was a filing room, but not like the others. The drawers were massive, some nearly as tall as me, labeled in thick red stencils, with dates going back over a century. We tried pulling one open. It groaned like it hadn't been touched in decades. Dust spilled from the seams. Inside were photos, black and white, clipped to thick manila case files. But none of them had names. Just timestamps, coordinates, and short, handwritten notes scribbled in uneven, jittery pen. And every photo showed the same thing. People looking directly into the lens. Same dead center stare. Same vacant expression. Different faces. Different times. But every one of them seemed to be aware they were being watched. That stare hit harder in person. One file had a note under it that simply read, "Sequence broken. Recovery failed." We kept digging. Then we found the reel. An old film canister tucked behind the last drawer, marked with the same number as the door, 0. Anderson set it on the floor and cracked it open. The reel inside was pristine. No dust, no scratches. Just a single strip of black film coiled tight, sealed with a red wax stamp over the center. I don't know what made him do it. Curiosity, probably, or something deeper. Anderson reached into his bag. pulled out the old portable viewer he always carried, and slid the film in. I told him to wait. He didn't. The second the device clicked, all the overhead lights shut off, instantly. Only the viewfinder stayed active, casting that soft green glow. Anderson looked through it. Then he stopped breathing. Didn't faint, didn't gasp, just froze. Eyes wide, hands trembling. I yanked the viewer off him, panicking. But when I looked through it, I didn't see the film. I saw the hallway we just come from, empty, except for one figure, far in the distance, standing completely still, facing us. I turned around. The hallway behind us was dark and very, very quiet. The elevator ride to sub-level 9 was slower than I expected, deep, metallic groans echoing through the shaft as if the building itself disapproved. Each floor took longer than the last. The button for sub-level 9 had no label, just a faintly glowing ring where a designation had been scratched away. Officially, nothing past sub-level 7 was supposed to exist. The blueprints ended there, the index files ended there. But the key card reader hadn't disagreed. As the doors creaked open, a blast of frigid air spilled into the car, thick and biting. The temperature shift was immediate, sharp enough to sting the skin. Emergency lights blinked in slow pulses along the hallway ahead, casting the corridor in rhythmic shadows that made it hard to tell what was real. Pipes coiled along the ceiling, wrapped in foam insulation that had rotted through, leaving patches of mold and rust in its place. The floor was slick with condensation, though there was no source for the humidity. No leaks, no machinery humming, just stillness and cold. I walked the length of the hallway, boots echoing too loud against the damp concrete. At the end were 3 large doors, reinforced and bolted. Only one had a working panel. Its faded sign read, Archive B13, but someone had sloppily crossed it out and scrawled a new label in permanent marker. Deep file access, authorized only. The card reader blinked once, then green. Inside, the space didn't resemble any archive I'd seen. It was a hybrid, vault, control center, and surveillance hub. Shelves of sealed plastic boxes lined the perimeter, their contents unreadable through the thick heat shrink. Dust coated every surface except one. The bank of monitors clustered at the back. 12 CRT screens hummed with static electricity and dim light. Most played grainy black and white footage on endless loop. The timestamps jumped across decades. 1991, 1998, 2004. Each screen was labeled with redacted code. Redacted, OBS 4, Session 12C, Control Wing 170 and Posh Altinja. The footage was silent. Empty chairs, interrogation rooms, old tape recorders, sometimes just audio waveforms, flickering with phantom noise. But one feed was different. It was labeled Live. It showed a narrow corridor, cleaner than the rest, with a single steel door marked Observation 3. The camera angle never changed. As I stared, the hallway lights began to flicker. A shadow passed over the frame. The door in view creaked open a few inches. I leaned closer, expecting movement from inside the room. Nothing. Instead, from the far left of the screen, a figure slid into view. It didn't walk. It drifted, skin nearly translucent. Hospital gown loose at the shoulders, bare feet. It stopped halfway down the hall and turned. No features, just a blurred oval where a face should be. And I swear it was looking at me. Not at the camera, not at the screen, at me. I looked away, just for a second. When I looked back, the screen had gone black. Not static, not a cut feed, just an endless, depthless black. Beside the monitors, a digital recorder sat idle, one of the old models. No power cord, no battery indicator. Still, it whirred to life on its own. A voice came through. Male, dry, slight accent I couldn't quite place. Calm, but final. You've accessed this file before. You just don't remember it. A soft mechanical click echoed behind me. The door I'd entered through was no longer shut, and I wasn't alone anymore. The last person to enter the sub-basement was supposed to be me, but the camera feed said otherwise. It was 2:44 a.m. when I keyed in, passing the biometric scan and descending the final iron staircase that no one liked to talk about. As my boots echoed through the corridor, I heard the main relay click back into place behind me. That was normal. Auto locks, motion detection. But something about it this time felt too final. I followed the orange conduit lines across the concrete and turned left past the shattered vent grate. The hallway dipped into silence again. When I reached Deep File Storage Bay 3, I saw the green light on the access pad was already on, unlocked, which wasn't possible. I drew my sidearm before stepping inside. The lights inside flickered on by motion sensor. Nothing had changed from the day before, except one thing. Tape room D, the one we sealed last year, was open, not ajar, wide open. The metal door was fully retracted into the wall. Inside, the flickering monitor that we disconnected months ago was running a looped reel. It was footage of me. Not just any footage. Last night's walk through the corridor, the exact one I'd just done minutes ago. But in the loop, I wasn't alone. Behind me, trailing just far enough to avoid the light, was something tall and narrow. A silhouette that didn't match any profile I'd seen before. It walked exactly when I did, matched my breathing, matched my pauses, and then it stopped, looked directly into the camera, and smiled. That footage shouldn't exist. We wiped the feeds after every shift. I tried pausing the tape. Couldn't. The controls didn't respond. The timestamp on the screen updated every cycle, but moved backwards. When I turned to leave, my own voice came from the speakers behind me. Not yet. I froze. I hadn't said anything. The voice continued, flat and emotionless, like it was being read aloud by something trying to remember how speech worked. You're already part of it. We kept your file open. The air got heavy. The lights dimmed. Then I noticed the second door had opened, the one labeled AUXDATASPLICE. That door had never been opened before. There was no clearance high enough. Inside, the walls weren't concrete. They were mirror-finished steel. No reflections, just shadows. Like the room was absorbing detail. In the center, a table, a reel-to-reel player, a microphone, and a folder marked B12A, my previous case. It was empty. A second folder lay beneath it. Label B12A. Same name. But inside were photos of me standing in rooms I'd never entered, talking to people I'd never met, surveillance footage of events I didn't remember, me on camera, operating equipment I'd never seen before. The file ended with a timestamp, 4:02 a.m. It was currently 3:59. My radio crackled. One word. Ready? I backed out of the room, heart pounding, only to find the hallway had changed. There were more doors now, each labeled after familiar files, each one faintly glowing under the surface, like light behind skin. I started running, but no matter how many corners I turned, I ended up in the same corridor. Same loop, same lights. And then my earpiece buzzed again, my own voice. 4:02. Record begins now. The last thing I saw before the lights cut was the silhouette again. This time, it wasn't in the footage. It was behind me, watching, recording, end of story,